Hello, this is Ryan.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the February 8th Hopkinton Town Council meeting to order with a moment of silence and a salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to start this meeting off with it's an introduction by Charahoe Director of Administration and Finance, Ned Draper, and Richmond School Committeeman, Ryan Callahan. And the subject is newer and fewer schools. If Mr. Callahan or Mr. Draper is in the audience, if you could raise your hand and I will open it up. Okay, I see Mr. Callahan. Mr. Callahan, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir. Would you like to start off tonight?
Yes, sir. If you'll permit, I appreciate it. Thank you all for having us and being so accommodating on the agenda to allow us to go first. Really appreciate it. The Ned is not with me this evening, but Superintendent Picard is. And with your permission, I'd like to share a few slides and walk you through the newer and fewer proposals that we're considering, as well as just kind of tell you a little bit about the necessity for school construction committee.
Excellent. Sounds good. You have the floor, Mr. Callahan.
Thank you.
I'm calling in, so I won't be able to see the slides. So I guess I would like for you to email a copy to the town clerk afterwards, so she can put it in our packet.
Yeah, Scott Bill Hurst, Councilor Gary and I can't see because we don't have laptops. We're in the council chamber. I know the council president probably could see the slides, but I don't think it's necessary to see the slides. If people want to show pictures somehow in our council packet, that's fine too.
Okay, I'll make sure that a copy of this is made available to you. Absolutely. The host is disabled participant screen sharing. If that can be enabled, I'll walk you through it.
Okay, hold on one second.
This is Chris. He should be good now.
Excellent. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Is the
Yes,
resolution good enough, or do you need me to go to full screen?
It's good from here.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you all. I really appreciate this. For those of you who can't see the screen, I will talk to it as best I can, but I'll also be providing copies of this to the committee. I do want to again thank the council members for allowing us to attend, and Mr. President, thank you for allowing us to go first. From here, we're going to jump over to the Charlestown meeting next, so we've kind of got a full docket plan for this evening. So for a little bit of background, I think all of you are familiar with our capital planning and how capital works for the school district. As we go in and target projects to either repair or improve our infrastructure, the state reimburses us a fixed amount. A couple of years ago, the state decided to incentivize certain types of capital plans. So our typical reimbursement rate is approximately 65%. And what they did is they incentivized it such that if there were specific capital projects that met criteria, they would give an additional 5% or 10%, up to a maximum of 80%. Part of the school committee's desire was to explore what that incentivized, position could mean for our district. And so we created a subcommittee called the Necessity for School Construction Committee. And the goal was just to simply explore options for our community, to present to our community and make some decisions whether or not we want to take advantage of these incentivized positions before they run out. So the school committee created this subcommittee. We went through quite a bit of background in order to kind of assess what options we could really come up with for our district. And the first thing we wanted to do was take a look at the demographics. We hired a demographer and we started to look at what our district was going to look like over the next 10 years. And the demographer came in from McKibben Demographics Research, and they went through each town's records in terms of purchasing of houses, the types of families that were moving into the district. Is it empty nesters? Do they have children? What was the projected number of children going to be, and so on. We chose to update this demographic survey because the previous one that we had, it actually wasn't a demographic survey. It was part of the Jacobs report. And what they did at that time, and this is about, I want to say 5, possibly 6 years ago, they looked at trends in enrollment over the last couple of years, and then they just performed a regression analysis. And that there was a pretty big disconnect between what we were seeing in the district and what that previous report had projected. And so we wanted to get a bit more in depth. And the takeaway from this, and we can provide the full report if you want it, but over the next 5 years, we see a slight uptick in the number of students. And over the 5 years after that, we see a slight downtick in the number of students. So overall, over the next 10 years, we're expecting our school district to maintain right around the 3,300 student mark. We'll get up to 3,400, possibly a little bit higher, and then drop down to about 3,300 again. And this was provided to us. So what we wanted to understand was basically, were we anticipating a massive decline or a massive spike? And in fact, it just basically said we're going to remain relatively flat over the next 10 years. The next thing we wanted to take a look at was the assessment of our existing infrastructure. Now, we had the Jacobs report, and we also wanted to update that to see take out what capital plans we had, or capital we had already put in to make some corrections there, but then also take a look at what structural challenges we have within our district. I think everybody's aware we have 8 buildings, 4 elementary schools, a high school, middle school, career and tech, and the new Cala building. The report that came out from that shows that you can kind of see it down in the bottom right. And what this effectively tells us is for each school, what the projected capital need for all the infrastructure repairs or upgrades to those specific schools. So this gives us a baseline of what we anticipate needing in terms of capital. All right, so once we had this demographics report, we had this facility assessment, we could now start to look at, okay, we anticipate these types of capital needs over this next time period. Is there an option within this newer and fewer landscape with this incentivized position that the state has provided us for us to explore some consolidation of the existing assets or upgrades to the existing assets? And so that's what we really came up with. And what we ended up doing in terms of, kind of finding out what direction we wanted to go in, we engaged an awful lot of just administrators and students and parents in order to find out how, what educational needs they currently took advantage of or had within the district and where they saw those needs falling short, and how we could shore those up with improvements or changes within the district. So we provided a number of interviews, a lot of interviews in terms of with school administrators and teachers and students, a number of workshops, and so that parents and community members could comment on where they saw needs within the district from an educational standpoint, and then we took that information and kind of integrated it into, okay, a capital need, the space that we could provide that need or resolution for that gap. So there's three options that we kind of came up with. We had a number of other paths that we explored, and each one really had some major shortfalls to it. And so in the end, it came up with approximately three. And I'll break this down a little bit on some subsequent foils. But option A, B, and C. So option A is probably the most dramatic option. It is the closing of the 4 elementary schools and building one brand new elementary school. The incentive position would increase over the 65% to 80%. It would close approximately 174,000 square feet of building space. It would create 213,000 square footage of new construction. The 5 schools remaining would be the high school, career and tech, middle school, CALA, and then the 1 elementary school. We felt that pulling 5th grade out of the middle school and back into elementary school made the most sense. And it was a key feedback that we had from parents. So the proposal would be to pull, it would be K through 5 or pre-K through 5. And then it would allow us to look at, as you kind of go down through here, the new elementary school, there's options in terms of location that has not been decided. It's something that we would have to decide as a community on where it went. There'd be a lot of studies necessary to figure out the best place for it. But there's some challenges with it. And the district has provided a lot of really interesting feedback in some of those challenges. So option B is one in which we would take the existing 4 elementary schools, close Hope Valley, and add extensions or add buildings onto the remaining 3 elementary schools. We believe that the reimbursement, we could still achieve an 80% reimbursement for that project. It would take 1 elementary school offline, and then we'd be left with 7 schools remaining. The 5th grade in that scenario is also pulled into those elementary schools, and it allows us to upgrade the elementary schools as well as expand them a little bit. So the target there would probably be about 78,000 square footage of new construction adding to that. There are some challenges with option B as well. We'd have to change the Charahoe Act in order to achieve it. It's not insurmountable, but it's something that we would have to address. And then option C is actually what we do today. So option C is a decision not to make any consolidation or close any schools. It's maintain our existing 8 buildings and continue on with our 5-year capital plan as it is done today. It's the least incentivized position, so we'll still try to take advantage of any capital bonuses that we can achieve, but I think we have to, at best, it would be 5%. All right, so I have a breakdown on each one. So for option A, and so what I'm showing here is basically like a cartoon overview of some examples. The structure of the building isn't fixed. None of that's been, scoped out. This is just an example. And the idea behind this is to provide an example of what we could do within a consolidated framework, what it would look like from the standpoint of, okay, where would we try and have it? And what type of efficiencies would we gain from it? With respect to the single elementary school model, I think a lot of the efficiency you get, especially if we're able to locate it close to the main campus today, is it really comes into efficiencies in administration and maintenance and busing and all the things that right now we have replicates of just because of the geographical location of the 4 elementary schools. Projected costs, in this case, this is our, the $103 million is an estimate. It's an estimate based off of some figures provided to us from RIDE. So I think it's a good estimate from that standpoint, but it's, like I said, I think it's an estimate. The rest of the when you see this top line here, the high school, tech, middle school, CALA, and admin, that's capital identified in terms of existing capital needs. So that's just a carry through. With respect to option B, we have some ideas of where those would go as well. Again, you'll see this top line, it remains the same through all the options. That's just a carry through of existing kind of capital needs for those buildings. To expand Ashway and Charlestown and Richmond, we list out kind of the square footage that we think would need to be part of that expansion. Again, a lot of that square footage is determined, the total square footage per student is provided by RIDE in terms of guidance. And then there's some costing here in terms of where we think that expansion would end up costing the district. And then the final one is just simply taking the existing capital needs as identified within the Jacobs report, as well as our recent updated overview of those buildings, and just carry through so that you can see what the positions there would be. Those are identified in the report. Okay, so I know that's a lot of information. So I really just wanted to, it's been shared publicly a number of times, but I wanted to be able to just provide it here briefly to the town council and public, as well as take any questions that anybody has.
Ryan?
Yes, ma'am.
Ryan, this is Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi. On your option, I have 2 questions. On your option A, where you're closing 4 elementary schools, how many square feet are you getting rid of?
174,000.
Okay, because I didn't write that down. And what are the costs of B for the expansion, and C, what are the existing capital needs cost?
So the modeled cost to the district after reimbursement, taking into.
No.
Are you looking for straight up costs?
Well, I'm trying to compare what it's going to cost us. So the
yes,
A you said was $103 million.
Yeah. So that's the way you want to look at these 3 costs are after the reimbursement, because the reimbursement changes per option. So, for instance, cost to district for option A, the one new elementary, is projected to be $32.5 million. That's including the capital necessary for the high school, middle school, CALA, and tech. Option B is approximately $20 million. And that includes, again, the capital for the main campus, like I said, high school, middle school, and CALA. Option C is approximately $21 million. And that's our existing infrastructure, all schools maintained.
Okay, and I have one more question. If you in all of these, what happens personnel-wise? Would you have less personnel in the one new under option A, for example? You wouldn't need 4 principals. You would only need 1, right? I understand you're asking. So in terms of personnel, you're not going to have a massive reduction in headcount. You can't, right? There's no way to do that. You without raising. So and I want to be
clear about this. You gain some efficiencies. So yes, are we going to have 4 principals? No, we won't. But are we going to have 1 principal by themselves and 1 assistant? No way. That's going to be impossible to manage. You'll most likely have 2 assistants, or maybe even more. I don't know. I'd have to dig into that. But in terms of class size and teachers and everything, the efficiency that you get now is that you're able to balance out your class sizes so that you don't have to specifically add a teacher in order to handle, say, a very large 4th grade class at Richmond Elementary. You're able to balance all that out, but you're not going to raise the number of students per class. That's not going to happen.
Well, you said that the current 4 elementaries were 174,000 square feet, and you're going to go to 213. So you obviously are going to have, more space.
More space, yes.
Than we currently have. So
Correct.
Okay, that's it for now.
Okay. Well, if something else comes up, just email me, call me. I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Scott Bill Hurst, I got about 4 questions. What is I understand there's a concern with the septic system over at the main campus, or there's particularly a concern. If you were to add another building over on that facility in Wood River Junction, what would the impact be on the septic and the water system as it's currently over there?
Yeah, it's a great question. We'd have to have a full, not only just an engineering study of whether or not how that's going to be impacting the existing infrastructure and any tie-ins associated with that, or if there's going to be something new and standalone created. But we're also going to have engineering and environmental studies done to make sure that that's a right location, and that by putting that facility there, there's not going to be a detrimental impact to the district or the neighborhoods around there.
The other thing I have is the concern about the transportation of younger children to Wood River Junction. I know at least some places in the Asheville area where I live, I think it's about 8 miles to go to Wood River Junction, depending upon where you live. I mean, that's quite a long bus ride if we were to take that option.
We'd have to take a look at the busing. Obviously, the nice thing about the having the busing to one location, it does simplify things in some ways, but we'd have to take a look at that. I don't know. Okay. The overall impact.
And you're trying to sell replacing schools or doing something for other schools. The situation with Charahoe is that this is my 50th anniversary of high school graduation, class of 71 this year. So I've lived here 67 years. What is the current maintenance of the school buildings, which the elementary school buildings are owned by the towns and are rented to the school district, but the school district has the obligation to maintain the buildings. And supposedly somebody had posted on Facebook about the 2 Hopkinton schools, or I guess the ones with supposedly the most need. I don't know if that's true or not, but what's the state of the maintenance of schools currently that are under the owned by the respective towns, but the Charahoe School District is supposed to maintain them?
Right. So in terms of the existing infrastructure, so in a hypothetical situation where, a 1 school option was selected, the Charahoe would maintain the existing schools until that 1 new school became or went live. And then those schools would be handed back to the towns. The existing schools would go back to the towns.
The other thing I'm concerned about is the Charahoe Act compliance. For many years, there's been a push in some quarters to eliminate the legal problem, and there's certainly a political problem of going over town lines dealing with elementary schools. So if we were to change the Charahoe Act, I assume that would go to the wayside. So even if we ever decided in the future to have more than 1 elementary school in Charahoe, that situation would go, and there would be so-called no more local schools per se, and the school district would be free to assign children to whatever elementary school if it ends up being more than one elementary school in the future.
Right. So I think I touched on it a little bit. So with the option B, in the sense of closing one school and expanding the remaining three, I believe that we would have to augment the Charahoe Act to allow for students to be placed in the schools that are available and have open seats for them if it comes to that.
Okay, my last thing, I would hope if you're going to talk about staffing for a single school, I hope you seriously look at an outside management study that can identify the staffing needs and other needs of a single elementary school and other things for the district. I'm just putting that out there. I know it's an obsession with mine, but it would seem to be more stronger argument to have an outside management study if you're thinking about just reducing all the elementary schools for one elementary school. And with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your feedback.
Hey, Ryan, Counselor Mike Geary here. Quick question. I kind of follow you this, but of course I like to see it in hand so I can look at it by looking at the computer screen. I'll look at that after you send it. Are elementary schools full student-wise, or they half full?
That's a great question. There's I forget what it's called. There's actually an efficiency rating that was part of our assessment of the schools at the beginning, and I wish I'd put it into these foils. I can find it, but it talks about the existing schools and their utilization. So the schools are they are getting, I'd say, Charlestown is becoming more open. Ashway is becoming a bit more full, but none of them are at what I'd say max capacity. There's a target number. You probably want them at about 80% for the most efficient use or utilization of the building. But beyond that, it's much too crowded. So some of them are approaching that point, Richmond and Ashway, I think, but I'd have to double check those numbers. I'll get that foil and include it in these slides.
Yeah. The only other question for you, most of the I know Ashway and Hope Valley, some of those schools are built in the 50s, early 60s, right? The elementary schools. Yeah.
So I can't remember the years of each one. Two of our schools are 86 years old. The other two one is, I think, 57, and the last one 67, but I don't remember which is which offhand.
All right, last question. I was looking at some of your slides here. Would it be feasible to slide an elementary school in Wood River Junction, or there's just not enough room?
So in terms of physical location of a one big school, that's not fixed in any way. I think we put a cartoon in place that showed it near the main campus, but that hasn't been decided. That hasn't been.
No. I'm not holding you to that. I'm just saying,
okay.
Just an open question. Would there be enough room for a 1 through 5 school there? That's all.
Yeah, I'd hesitate to make a statement saying that yes, there is. I'd have to have that confirmed.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate your work tonight. Thank you.
Ryan?
You're welcome. Yes?
Ryan, I do have another question. So basically, after you made this presentation, what next steps are you expecting from us?
This is informative. It's just a chance for you to kick the tires a little bit, kind of form an opinion of it, talk to your school committee members, give them your input. Next steps, the school committee needs to make a decision. The school committee needs to make a decision on a path forward, and I'm hoping that they can make that decision tomorrow night. From there, all it will do is put a vote in front of the towns. And my understanding of the process is that if we decide option A or B, because option C is kind of like a default, we'll finish off the capital year plan, or 5-year capital plan, but we won't have to do a vote on it outside of the budgetary votes. But for option A and B, those would have to go to the towns and be voted on. And if that vote would effectively establish that there's a referendum on it, and that referendum then would, if passed, it would trigger the creation of a building committee, which would take on the project. So there's a lot
Brian,
to do.
Do you really think you have enough information to make a decision if you don't know where you would put it? You don't know how much more transportation costs would be involved, and if the residents would be, if the elementary school residents would be amenable to having their children bused more, where they are maybe walking to school now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Living in the suburbs, it sounds like you need a car, period. But or you're on a bus. But I walked to my grade school when I was growing up. But at any rate, don't you think we need more costs locked down before we can make a decision?
Yeah, I don't think so, and I think that you're not going to be able to lock down transportation costs, for example. Right, you're not going to be able to lock that down until you have a parcel of land that you actually get approval to purchase, and it's in your possession, and you're able to start your build. So what this does is this establishes that this is the path forward. Whatever direction the voters take it, this is the path forward. And then we're going to have to do the run, block, and tackle type of stuff associated with seeing that come to fruition. Let me put it another way. You would have to identify a piece of land. You would have to have a guarantee that you could actually purchase it once the funds became available. And you'd then have to scope out quite a bit of engineering work in order to validate that would actually fit your needs, that you would be able to build on that site, that it's environmentally safe, all these things. And you'd have to do all of that prior to getting your funding. I don't see that as feasible at this stage. It would probably cost a few $100,000 to get to that point, possibly $500,000.
Yep. But on the other hand, I think it's a little hard for people to truly know what they're voting for if they don't have the full or even ranges. They have no idea how much more transportation costs. They have no idea even what you came up with this $103 million. That $103 million, did that include new land? Did it, some kind of estimate for the land? It had to be involved in that, right?
No, the land purchase wasn't part of that. It wasn't. It was estimated based on what. So RIDE has kind of this formula where it says, okay, for a new building, you should have X amount of square foot per child at this age range. And then this is the estimated cost per square foot based on, the input that they have to come up with that cost figure. And that's how you get your estimate at this stage.
I see.
Because,
so if you had if you had a committee going forward, they would, that might be their budget. This is how much we can spend max, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally understand. I understand, but your position and your concern on that, I just don't know how to refine that number to a point where you would be comfortable with it, and that we would have a high confidence that we would be able to actually deliver that number. The way it works, this goes through stages. and those stages need to go through an approval process at RIDE, and we're at this kind of introductory stage. All the things that you mentioned, those would get scoped out going forward as part of the additional stage 2 deployment of this plan.
Well, if that 103 million does not include land, then it's more. We are going to have to add more to that number.
Yeah.
So
there's plus and minuses on each one of these. I don't mean to say that this is like cut and dried. This is exactly it. We don't have engineering specs. We don't have all the things necessary to say that. And I think that so anyways, it's the best estimate that we can provide today. It's the most accurate estimate that we can provide you at this point in time.
I understand. Okay, and if we have to provide you feedback when, so that you would know. You're saying you're going to have a vote tomorrow, right?
I'm going to talk to the school committee tomorrow. I'm hoping we have a vote, but it's up to them, really. All of us. I'm just one voice. So keep in mind, the vote is not the vote effectively. If there was a vote to go with option A or B, it effectively is an affirmation that we're going to put this to the voters. That's the vote, right? It's not. This has to go through multiple rounds of public voting to actually take place.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Brian Rosso, did you want to speak in or speak to any of this?
Yeah, I have a couple questions for you. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. How you doing, Brian?
Good, thanks. This is Finance Director Brian Rosso. Just had a couple questions, and I think Councilwoman Davis kind of hit on my first one, was the land, the 72.6 acres. If you're going to try to procure that in the vicinity, that graphic there, do we have any idea who owns that land, how much it's going to cost? Because that seems like at this point we've kind of shown our hand that we want to purchase that land.
Yeah. So this was yes, we know who owns land. Yes, we know it's zoned in a way that it could be used for this. No, we have not approached them or anything like that. I understand your comment about showing your hand, but this is not a fixed location. So if it wasn't, market value, or if there was a site that fit a single elementary school better than this, I don't see an issue in going to the site. This is just a rendering to give people an idea.
Gotcha. Okay. And a couple other questions, just basically about like the breakdown, like your projected cost. I think it'd be helpful for us to maybe see a little more detail, a little more transparency on those breakdowns. Just having a finance background, I'd be curious what's incorporated in those costs. For example, I know I've mentioned to you at the Omnibus meeting our concern about the current buildings, the elementary schools that would be abandoned or no more, they wouldn't be used any longer. Hopkinton's already stuck with one elementary school, and we don't really want to have to get stuck with another one. So I didn't know if that was incorporated in your costs.
No. Yeah. So that's a great question, because I know that's something that has been brought up by a few folks. Actually, we have an online survey, and that was one of the things that people have provided feedback of. What are we going to do with these buildings afterwards? And I wish I could answer that, but it'll be up to the towns to decide how those buildings are used going forward if they were to be handed back to the towns. So that's something to consider for sure. And as far as the district facility assessment, the numbers that we came up with and so on, or the engineering firms identified, then this is publicly available. You can have it. Absolutely. I'll find a way to make sure you get that.
Okay. And I don't mean to keep, you know, being pessimistic about this, but I just want to have some questions answered and have the information out there so everyone's aware. Like the reimbursement that you're projecting at 80%, that's the max reimbursement from RIDE. Do we have any, how do we know that we'd get the 80% versus the 65 and it wouldn't be say 70% or 75, particularly with the change on the state level with the new governor, you know, things could be pretty fluid and we don't really know, but do you know for sure?
Yeah, so that funding's been set aside already for this incentivized position. And the way it goes is once you submit your packet to RIDE, and then once RIDE approves it, it's approved and you have your identified reimbursement rate in that approval.
Oh, okay. All right. And then my last point would just be, you would probably go to bond for this, it sounds like.
Yep.
And if that's the case, I think it's helpful for residents, and I certainly see this on the town level. When we start talking about projects of this scale, it's nice for the taxpayers and the residents to be able to identify with those costs. So when they see a number like, you know, 113 million or whatever the projection of option A is, it's really hard for them to digest that. And I think if we could break it down in a form that would show the impact to taxpayers, because that's ultimately what's going to help them make a decision as to whether they think it's financially feasible. How much is it going to affect them on an individual level as a taxpayer versus the whole district cost? I just think it's kind of hard for people to make that connection from the project cost to, you know, how's it going to affect my taxes? And I just think that, you know, that's just something that I think would be helpful for residents to make a decision on a project of this scale. And I'm not, you know, again, I keep asking these questions and I'm not trying to approach this as if I'm not in favor of it. That's not really my role. That's up to the councils. But I just wanted to kind of ask these questions just to, you know, present them, hopefully help you guys going forward.
No, I really appreciate it. And this is part of the process. I really just wanted to get, you know, the questions out and hear what the folks are thinking about, you know, based on, you know, Sharon brought up a number of really good questions. You, in terms of talking about bond and how it's going to impact the taxpayer, I totally get it. And so what I have just in here is a high level estimate of what the projected cost would be and the impact to the district based on the additional incentive provided by the state. So it would probably need a further step, which would be the amount of a bond, right? And then what the resulting impact would be to the individual towns and then the tax base.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had.
And Ryan, there's obviously, you say maybe some savings administratively, but we're actually going to be spending more money, right? I mean, it's not going to cost less. It's going to cost more than what we're spending now. At least A is. It sounds like C, if we just maintain the buildings, we'd be spending $21 million over 5 years. And B, if we closed Hope Valley and added extensions, we'd be actually spending supposedly $1 million less, $20 million. So I think that needs to be emphasized or something. I mean, I need to know if I'm going to be spending more money.
Option A, just so we're all on the same page, option A would be the most expensive option to the district. It would be the most expensive from a capital standpoint. You would gain efficiencies in administration and staffing, but I can't predict to you how big those would be today. That's the kind of question, like if you're asking, would we be able to, reduce headcount and those things, we'll be able to gain some efficiency, but the magnitude and the impact, I don't know what that would be. From a capital standpoint, I think the way I would look at it, Sharon, and I know you go through the budget very detailed, and we really appreciate that. I guess my take on this would be, if at any point in time in the next 10 to 20 years, there's an expectation that there's going to be a massive capital project in which we're going to build new schools, then you should take a good hard look at whether or not we should do that now. Because if consolidation, the way to think about this would be 10 years from now, or 2 years from now, really, when this incentive is gone, if we have $100 million elementary school and we're going to do a consolidation, we will get reimbursed 65%, right? So that tells you pretty much the $35 million bill you will get. There's a big difference between the 80% reimbursement today and a 65% 2 years from now. And that's really where you have to start thinking about, okay, given our infrastructure, given the schools that we have, the age of that infrastructure, does it make sense to take advantage of this incentive position? And that's really, I'm not trying to sell you anything. I have no dog in this fight. This is just, we as school committee members, we wanted to make sure that we explored this for our towns. And if the towns decide this isn't the direction they want to go in, I totally support it. That's fine with me. But I think that's the type of thinking. It's not so much as, okay, this is the dollar amount that I'm going to spend for option A or B or C. It's, do I see a major infrastructure need over the next time period of greater than 2 years? And if I do, then does it make sense to thoroughly explore having this reimbursement? Because if you're going to do something big, this is the time, really. That incentive is big enough that it could save the district many millions of dollars. So that's how I think of it.
And I have one more question. I'll let you go. On the budgets, you guys have been talking about maintenance of effort or whatever that's called. How does that fit in? I mean, I think if you consolidate 4 schools into one, I'm sorry, I do not think you need the same number of people. There's got to be you might need the same number of teachers, but you don't need the same number of administrative people. That's what I think. So I think there should be a reduction in the budget on those lines, and you're not saying that. So, would you get stuck with the maintenance of effort number that you have to maintain every year once you went from 4 elementary schools to 1? Would you have to keep that maintenance of effort, whatever that value is, for the 4 schools, bring that over to the new school? That's the kind of question I have.
Yeah, it's a great question, Sharon, and I totally understand why you're asking it. And that's why I keep saying that I fully expect there to be efficiencies with a single school versus the 4. Would there be redundancy that would allow us to adjust the head count in a more efficient and cost savings to the district? Yes. But do I know the magnitude of that? No. And do I want to start speculating about that? Not really. I'm not a professional administrator. I'm going to rely heavily on the superintendent and the professionals to tell me what they need in order to provide the top-notch education to our kids.
Okay. That's it for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council Marvel, do you have any input or any questions or anything? If not, I'll go to some. There's some hands raised in the audience here.
No, I've got no questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Scott, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to point out that right now on the town level in Hopkinton, we have the old Ashway School, which we don't know what's going to happen. I know there's a sentiment to tear it down. And if we were to, the Charter School District would turn over the Hope Valley School and the so-called new, which was built in 67, the new Ashway School, the town of Hopkinton would have to deal with the reality of what to do with that property, and whether it turns into senior housing or whatever. So that's also a financial consequence for Hopkinton. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Scott. All right, go ahead, Mike.
Hey, Ryan, Counselor Gary, when you opened up, when you opened up when we opened up and started talking, you said the study was done over the last 5 years and there was an uptick in enrollment, correct?
Yeah, so on the demographic study.
Right. I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good. So we had the original demographic study. It wasn't a demographic study. Like I said, it was what the folks looked at, and it was in the Jacobs report, and it basically said, okay, we see this performance over these 3 years, 4 years, whatever. So we're going to go ahead and just perform a regression analysis, and this is what we project the enrollment to be. And it showed a steady decline over time. Well, that was put out, I want to say it was 5-6 years ago, and it's been wrong ever since. We've held very stable over the last few years, 3-4 years, and now we're projecting, based on the demographer's report, a slight uptick. But I think
I guess,
considered just neutral.
So I guess my question is, how many students does enrollment go up every school year? Or like this year, how many new students did we get in Charo this year? I realize you're not an administrator.
Yeah, well, Gina's on. Superintendent Picard, are you unmuted? You want to answer that?
Yes, go ahead, Gina.
Hi. We actually have seen an uptick. While there have been home instructions as well, the Charo offers the policy where students can opt in for a course, which means that the per pupil expenditure remains and we don't lose that student completely. But we have seen an uptick in Richmond as well as Ashaway.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Principal. My question is, how many students this year for this cycle school are new to the Charo School?
I can get you that number. I just don't have it on me right now.
Okay, thank you.
New
Thank you,
enrollment.
Director.
Okay, Ryan, while Ms. Picard's getting information, I have a few hands up here, if you don't mind answering some more questions.
More than happy to.
Sure.
Thank you.
Ron, you have your hand up. Now go ahead and talk if you still have a question. You have to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Oh, Ron. Okay, looks like Ron's put his hand down. Next up, Joe Moreau, do you have a question? *6 to unmute.
No, I don't have a question, but I think it's a great point that Ryan mentioned, that if the schools are that old at this point and they're aging, I know from going to the Hope Valley Elementary to some of the meetings there, if they're aging now and they have to be replaced, it'd be to our advantage to take advantage of the 80% versus the 65%, but that's my only point. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Deb O'Leary, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My concern is that many things that I've read about elementary schools is that smaller is better. we're going to be putting 1,500, almost 1,500 children in one elementary school. That's a large school. That's larger than most high schools. I just wondered if Dr. Picard has done any studies on the educational effects of a big school versus small school for elementary students.
Ms.
So,
Picard, if you'd like to speak to that.
Thank you. Yes, sure. So as far as there's research on both sides, small schools, tighter community oriented culture, and larger schools. So the nice thing about research, I think, is that you could probably find research to for either argument. The class size wouldn't change, and that's really what most of the research will point to, the number of size for student teacher ratio. The concern about a large school is often, if you think about the old factory style, large, gigantic, buildings, which would not be the case if we moved in that direction. You would want to really be mindful of for example, your youngest learners, your pre-K through K, where you would design very thoughtfully. So your pre-K pod, if you will, and Dr. Callahan has it up, would be oriented right around your cafeteria, your library media rooms, so that they would not walk far. So they're designed in a way where they almost look like little villages, and the space throughout the buildings are designed. So and the hallways are opened in community spaces. They don't look like the schools of today. There's examples even in Rhode Island right now around Newport, Cranston, North Providence, who have all built new elementary schools over the last couple of years with this opportunity with the reimbursement rates. So the biggest concern always is that close-knit community, and you would really want to be very mindful of your teaching and learning plan. The most important thing for us is to really ensure we seek out the vision of our teaching and learning, not just for the next 5 years, but for the next 50 years, and so on and so forth, and then make sure the brick and mortar matches the vision we have for teaching and learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Catherine Giusti. You're unmuted.
Thank you. I just really would like to reiterate a couple of points that have already been made. We need to look towards the future. And I think we have a unique opportunity in our area to get a lot of money from the state. And we all know in our area, we don't typically get a whole lot of money from the state. 80% is a big chunk of change to be reimbursed. And there are a lot of things to talk about with these different options, but I think we really need a direction to move forward. And I think we need to be mindful of the fact that we know we have aging school buildings, and we can either choose as a town council and a community now to deal with this issue, or we can just push it off, knowing in the back of our minds that we have an issue with which to deal. So my 2 cents, I hope that the community at large wants to see us deal with our aging infrastructure and do it in a really thoughtful way, at the most cost efficient way. But again, Barry Ritchie used to like to say, the community will decide what our schools look like. And so this committee that we're on will go with what the community decides. But I really urge everybody to sit back and think about how we right now can help mitigate a problem that we know is only going to get bigger. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, Chip Hale. Go ahead, Chip.
Hi. When I was, I don't know if Ryan can go back to the demographic information that he had up there, but when you look at that over the next 5 years, that increase, I mean, it's a 3% increase in enrollment, a 3% change over the next 5 years. And so I think one thing, I mean, we can look at this kind of quantitatively. Within the next 2 years, we lose the incentive. We no longer get the 80% incentive. And if we project out a 3% increase every 5 years, what does that do to the capacity of our elementary schools? If some of the elementary schools are already approaching their most effective or efficient capacity, what rate at this so this is just extrapolating here. Is this 3% increase even across all schools? I'm making some assumptions, but at a 3% increase every 5 years, I'm just guessing here, but does that suddenly make our current elementary schools inefficient or less effective just purely based on numbers? And that might be the thing that we can lean on to say, look, we're within 5 or 10 years, we're going to exceed the effective capacity of our current elementary schools. That's not even mentioning infrastructure that's likely going to degrade over that time period. It makes a pretty good case that now is time to act in order to take advantage of these current state incentives. So anyways, I realize these are just modeled numbers, but it's important information that might just provide some emphasis actually towards where we should go on this decision. That's all.
Thank you, Chip. Next up, Eliza.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry. This is actually Ron Spears. I couldn't get my excuse me. I couldn't get my microphone to work. Thank you for taking this opportunity for allow us to talk. A couple different questions. One with option A. Ryan had said that the cost was based on them saying this is what a building should cost for this size per square footage. Is that taking into consideration the fact that we're over one of the largest aquifers in Rhode Island, and based on being in Wood River Junction, close to the river right there, because the river is only 100 yards behind Charo, there is going to need to be some sort of special septic system for a building of that size. Is that taken into consideration?
So great question. That is in terms of the place of, I'm sorry, there's some feedback, but in terms of placement of the option A building, that is not a fixed placement at this time. It doesn't mean that it's going to go exactly behind the main campus. It just is an illustration of a potential place we would be looking at. But you're absolutely correct in the sense of having concerns of where it goes. No matter where, if option A is selected, no matter where that building ends up, and it could be anywhere, in our region, it has to, be able to work within that geographical location and pass all the engineering studies as well as environmental studies necessary.
Well, I think one of the big things that you said was getting everything close to a campus for maintenance reasons, for all that. Doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose if it's not right next to Charo?
Well, you're talking about 4 buildings today consolidated into one. And instead of having, so that right there is where you gain your most efficient position. Sharing maintenance between, that entity and the main campus is now simplified. If that's 2 miles or 10 miles or something like that, that's simplified it just by the nature of reducing the number of buildings that would have to be serviced. So
well, it reduces it on the district, not on the town. As the council member had said, the town of Hopkinton still is going to have to pay to maintain Hope Valley Elementary School and Ashbury Elementary School if we go with a regional. So it may to the district, but not to the towns. And then my last question is the newer and fewer policy that is set by the people in Providence, in a city. So I get where it makes sense for Warwick, to not have vets in Tolman because they're all congested. Seeing as we are the largest regional school in Rhode Island by almost 1.5%, is it possible to apply for an exception to policy so that newer applies to Hope Valley Elementary School, not to a regional district?
Yeah, it's a question I don't know how to answer. I think based on our engagements with RIDE, I think it would be very difficult to get exemptions of the nature you're asking about. But
Again, they set these policies in the city where everybody can walk to school, and it doesn't make any sense. But when we're 143 square miles between Hopkinton, Richmond, and Charlestown, I don't understand how they can't look at that and say, okay, it doesn't make any sense for us to exclude you guys from this ability to apply for this. And that's something I think we need to look into.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the input.
I have one last hand up here in the audience. If your phone number ends in 9593, please speak. And state your name, please.
Carolyn Light, 43 Forest Glen Drive. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have a question. We're not on that slide, but for option A, the potential for reimbursement is between 65 and 80%. Is that true?
Yes. It's between 65 and 80%.
So we shouldn't be talking about 80%. We should be talking about 65 to 80, because when you're talking about those kinds of big dollars, 15% is a big swing, right?
Yeah, right. So
okay.
Let me make a comment on that. So with respect to option A, for example, the new building, that elementary building, would qualify for the 80%, right? It's the existing infrastructure that would get or maintain the 65%. And because you have to look at capital needs across the entire district, that's why I said it's a range between 65 and 80. It just depends on the exact building that you're talking about. But because it's such a big number, that's my point, in the sense that if you see a potential need, now is likely the best time to really go after that from a financial standpoint, because in 2 years that'll be gone. It'll revert back to 65.
Like me looking at houses for $700,000 when the bank is only going to mortgage me for $5 million, right? I kind of feel like that from a resident's perspective. Maybe it's a tough one to grasp, but we're talking about existing citizens and taxpayers agreeing to increase their tax expenditures for a fuzzy number right now. The other question I had is regarding the purchase, the acquisition of the land. Mm-hmm. That would be the obligation of Charahoe. Is there any reimbursement money for that?
So I don't know the land cost or the reimbursement amount. I'd have to look into that. Okay,
so there would be some reimbursement for the acquisition of the 75 acres, if that's the number we want to go with. There's a potential for some money to come back, because the actual acquisition of the land, again, could be a very big swing. Are we going to spend $2 million? Are we going to spend $5 million? And if that money itself doesn't qualify for much reimbursement, I think that's another number that our communities are going to have to look at. And I think this is a great marketing campaign. That's the way I'm looking at it. It sells really well, but I think we are short on some numbers that could make a very big difference in the commitment. And for the community of Hopkinton, that has seen increase in the school costs every year, I think you can sell the package, but you have to give us a lot more detail.
Yeah, so I totally understand where you're coming from on that. I wish I could answer 100% that yes, the land purchase is part of that reimbursement. I don't know. I will find out though. Okay. For general purposes, I think
Councilwoman Sharon Davis had mentioned some numbers that would make her feel a little more comfortable, or some characteristics of this plan. I can tell you that from my perspective, if I didn't have to worry about how much money I was spending every year, I would say, hey, let's do the $30 million one. Let's go.
Yeah,
but unfortunately,
I totally
yeah, that's not the demographic we're talking to. And the other thing I'd like to point out to you guys is something I said at a school committee meeting. These increases in the potential costs, they don't just go to the people who are living in those $400,000, $500,000 houses. They go to people who have limited budgets now. So when town council, when we vote on increasing the school budget, it still impacts the quality of life for the students that are attending those schools. Okay. Thank you for your time. Thanks for answering those questions.
Thank you for the input. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. One last question from the audience. I'm going to cut it off here. If your last name is Pope, I'm going to unmute you and just state your name for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Oren Pope.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I just have a couple of comments about more intangible sort of benefits. My husband and I actually bought our house in Hopkinton because of the school system and because of the small school and how close it is to where we're living. And one of the students who lives near me, when she transitioned to the middle school, she now has a 45-minute bus ride, which was really hard on her parents. It was really hard on her. I'm sure that they would change busing to some extent if we had all of the elementary school kids over next to the middle school, but that's a long day for a kindergartner, to ask them to be on the bus for 45 minutes and then do a 7-hour day of school and then a 45-minute ride home. And there are some parents that we wouldn't be able to schedule that. And I think the small town community that we have around Ashway Elementary and around Hope Valley Elementary is something that really can't be traded at this point. My son knows all of the teachers in the school, even the ones who are in the higher classes. He does no trouble asking any of them for help. That's something that would get traded for if we switched to a one elementary school system or if we got rid of one of those schools.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you looking for a response or just a statement?
No, that was more just a general comment. I'm hearing a lot about the money, and obviously that's a major issue, but there's some things that can't be measured tangibly. And I just wanted to make sure that that's something that's being also thought of.
Yeah, so you're definitely not alone in that comment or that concern. The survey online has a number of people who've provided very similar anecdotal and just general concerns about what a single building would do for that local school. So it's something that if the path forward is to explore a single elementary, it would have to account for that concern for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's going to conclude your presentation there, Ryan. Thank you very much. If you have any closing comments or anything, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I just want to thank the town council again for giving us this opportunity to share with you. Any feedback that you have for us, we're happy to take it. We're going to be discussing this publicly tomorrow night at the school committee meeting. And just thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
And thanks to those who asked some very, very good questions. Thank you. Okay, up next, we're going to move into a public hearing. Proposed amendment to Chapter 250, Hope Valley Waterline Distribution System Ordinance. 1. Open a hearing on a proposed amendment to Chapter 250, Hope Valley Waterline Distribution System Ordinance of the Code of Ordinances of the Town of Hopkinton, as amended, specifically the prohibited activities section. proposed amendment would add the following under prohibited activities. Under subsection G, every property within the district may not increase development beyond the lot's current Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management approved on-site wastewater treatment system. This proposed amendment had been introduced and sponsored by former councilor Sylvia Thompson, scheduled on October 19th, 2020 Town Council agenda, where the hearing date was set for February 1st, 2021. Sylvia, could you please raise your hand? Okay. The floor is yours, Sylvia.
Good evening, everyone. Sylvia Thompson here, Lawton Foster Road South in Hopkinton. I submitted this proposal for a variety of reasons, but just to give a little brief history and what this does and doesn't do and how it would affect the waterline users, the water line that extends from Richmond down into Hope Valley. Back in the late 80s, I chaired the Hope Valley Water Study Committee. Fred Stanley was on the committee at the time. Local residents were on the committee. And we began looking at the Hope Valley water, the village of Hope Valley, because of problems with wells and septic systems and contamination. So what we ended up with was the proposal to extend the water line from Richmond into Hope Valley. What I would like to do at this point is make part of the record two documents. One of them is the Hope Valley Public Water System Environmental Review, which was done in 1987, which the council was given, you should have a copy of, and also the Notice of Determination from the Rhode Island Division of Planning, the Office of Strategic Planning. And what I would first do is just explain briefly the Notice of Determination that comes from the state of Rhode Island is something that is done in order to receive federal funding, federal and state funding, in order to actually build the water line. It has to go through a review process, which involves a number of state offices. So what we ended up with back then was a number of conditions and stipulations that the state recommended in order to receive this funding. And I'd like to read one paragraph of that document, which explains why it is this amendment is before you tonight. This was written by, it is written by a review coordinator. I don't have his name in front of me, but it's from the Office of Strategic Planning. This proposed project generated a substantial amount of interest and some controversy. Most of the parties solicited for comments did not object to the extension of a water line into Hope Valley per se. However, there was a persistent thread of opposition based on the fact that the town has severe and longstanding problem with individual septic disposal systems. The concern is that an abundant supply of public water could lead to increased population growth in Hope Valley and increased water usage by current residents. This would further increase water usage by this would further overburden the town's individual septic disposal systems and could lead to contamination of groundwater in the nearby Wood River. The general opinion was that a public water supply in conjunction with a water conservation measures, a septic system maintenance plan, a septic system rehab plan, and controls on development. So we did at the time come up with rules and regulations in reference to the water line, whether or not and how people could hook up, which involved water conservation. They had to have their septic inspected. If it passed, that was fine. Perhaps they needed a new septic system. So we had leveraged federal monies for individuals who were income eligible. They could have a new septic system installed to repair what they had. And we did have, when I went through every single property and looked at every property and where their septic was and where their well was, I want to make it clear to all the residents and anybody listening that the problems that we had and continue to have in the area, these are problems that came about the density issues from the 18 and 1900s. This is and I'm not going to bring up individual property names. I'm only going to bring up some of the statistics on the area. And I want to point out that the Hope Valley waterline is 4,000 feet long. It goes from the Richmond Hopkinton boundary, which is the Wood River, right near the ballpark and the fruit stand. So the boundary is there. It goes 4,000 feet and it ends at Spring Street Market. So other than mentioning Spring Street Market, I'm not going to bring up any more names. There are approximately 68 properties, which includes the Hope Valley School. At the time, we learned, when we studied the area, we learned that there were pipes from properties that just had their septic. They didn't have a septic, and it just went into the river. So there were some properties that didn't have septics. There were other properties that the distance between the well and the septic was certainly not 100 feet and much less. So a couple of things I can tell you, just to give you an idea of the properties and how small they are. We have a four-family unit along the route, and it's 0.70 of an acre. These are the smallest properties. We have a three-family, and the size of the property is 0.14 of an acre. We have the smallest two-family is 0.16. The smallest single family is 0.16 of an acre. We have a restaurant, a store, and an apartment, and that's 0.14 of an acre. We have other two families that are 0.31, 0.27. There are quite a few of them that are 0.27, and there's a 0.37, and there's a 0.29. We have a lot of properties along that route and throughout some of the villages and throughout Hope Valley, and the densities are very, very, they are what they are, and it's not conducive to wells and septics and the distance between. So we currently have around maybe around 52 users, 52 users that have tied into the water line. And lastly, I would point out that tonight, this amendment will not, the way it's written, this will not prohibit anyone within this Hope Valley Waterline District. It will not prohibit development. If you have let me give you an example. If you have a septic system right now, current septic system, and it's approved for a 3-bedroom, but you only have 2 bedrooms, and you want to add a bedroom, you can, because your septic system is approved for 3 bedrooms. If you want to add onto your house and it's not a bedroom, that's probably okay. If you want to make any changes, you want to build a new house, as long as you don't increase the capacity of your septic system, everything's good. So that's what this ordinance is about, is just to limit anyone from increasing the capacity of their septic system. And there have been developmental pressures since the water line's gone in. And one of them, for instance, I don't know how it happened, but there is a property, it was originally a 2-family. Somehow it became a 5-family. We don't want that to occur. We want to limit your septic system. So somehow that happened. And in another property, they built a single-family home on the back of their property. We don't want any more of that within this Hope Valley waterline system. And I will lastly just say that the comprehensive plan in the land use section, public services section, the rec, conservation, and open space section all support and note that the Hope Valley is built out, and there are problems with density, and there are problems with septic. So, I mean, it's in the comprehensive plan that it would support this ordinance, and it's up to the people along the street to look at this and see if they support it, and whether the council supports it, whether the town supports it, and that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Lisa, a notice has been posted, and Waterline subscribers have had notices mailed to them.
Yes, there was an advertisement placed in the newspaper. A notice did go out to the Waterline users. Of course, it was for the February 1st hearing, but February 1st was canceled because of the snowstorm. So it was posted on the website. There was a continuance, but no one has reached out since that notice went out to question it at all.
Okay, thank you. All right. At this moment, I'd like to open up to council discussion, and I'm going to start off here with Councilor Geary.
Hey, Sylvia, Council Gary, thank you for bringing this out to us. Let me step back into my zoning days. A lot of this stuff that we have covered does get covered, and I know you know this, but does, for the benefit of the other council members, a lot of your stuff when it comes in via zoning, your ISDS, any kind of stuff like that, pretty much falls around how many houses you have, 2 or 3 bedroom. I just want to, on behalf of the other council members, that zoning does see this when it comes in.
Okay, Sylvia, do you have any comments to that, or anything to add to Councilor Gary's comments?
No, not at all. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Hurst, go ahead.
Scott Bill Hurst, there's no person in the town of Hopkinton that knows more about the Hope Valley water system than Sylvia K. Thompson. I thank you for your service to the town. And if you need anything to know about the water system in Hope Valley, Sylvia Thompson is the one to go to. That's all I want to say. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Scott. Councilor Davis or Councilor Marvel, do you have any questions or comments or anything?
I think it's fine. I think you should add it to the prohibited activities. It sounds like a good thing.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. Councilor Marvel, you're muted there. Let me.
Yep, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I don't have any questions or comments. I think this makes a lot of sense to add this.
As do I. At this moment, I will open it up to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to comment on this? If so, please raise your hand. And we'll give it about 30 seconds here. We've got about 17 attendees to possibly raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands raised, I would like to consider a motion to continue or to resume a public hearing at a later date, time, or place, or to set a date for a decision.
I'd like to set a date for a decision, and I would ask the town clerk when is the best time to set a date.
This is Lisa. Typically, when it's a simple matter like that, we can place it on your next regularly scheduled agenda for the decision, and that would be the 16th of February, if that's what you wish.
I would be agreeable to that. It's up to the council president, but I would like to have it on the 16th. I don't think we need an emotion, do we, to do that?
No, but you would need a motion to close the hearing if you're so inclined.
Okay. Mr. President, I make a motion that we close the hearing on the Hope Valley water line.
Mr. President, I second it.
All in favor?
Aye, Scott Bill Hurst, aye.
Moffat, aye.
Sharon
Marvel.
Davis, aye.
Marvel, aye.
Okay, Scott, again.
Motion passes.
I don't think we don't need a motion to do the 16th. It looks
No.
like it's, so I asked the council president to do it on the 16th of February, and I guess no motions needed.
Yes, Councilor Moffat here. I am in agreement with the 16th. Lisa, we can add the we can add a 16th as the date for a decision on this amendment to chapter 2.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Up next, the consent agenda. Approved town council meeting minutes and workshop minutes of January 19th, 2021. Workshop notes of January 11th, 2021. Approve abatements to 2020 tax rolls due to topography adjustments, correction of usable land, adjustments to highest and best use of excess land, adjustment to land use on excess acreage, duplicate motor vehicle billing submitted by the tax assessor, approve refund to overpayment by taxpayer on 2019 motor vehicle tax submitted by the tax collector. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Scott Bill Hurst, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Mr. President, I second it.
All in favor?
Mr. President, Scott Bill Hurst, I just want to thank the town clerk. About 20 after 4, I was concerned about being able to read the minutes, and she redid my minutes for me, although I found my packet. But I thank Lisa for having my back today. Thank you.
Excellent. All in favor of the motion?
Marvel, aye.
Hurst, aye.
Geary, aye.
Davis, aye.
Moffat, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, up next, council president report. Wood Pawcatuck Wild and Scenic Stewardship Council vacancy. This was put on the agenda to let the public know that we were looking for a candidate to fill this vacancy. So I would like to see any, we have received an application already, but I would like to see this potentially, if there's anyone else interested, by this Friday, submitting an application, please. And with that said, up next is the manager's report. Brian Rosso, you have the floor.
Good evening, council. This is Brian Rosso, Finance Director, Acting Town Manager. I just wanted to put this on the agenda just to have Ron McDonald a chance to speak and answer any questions. But first, I wanted to just thank everybody in the town manager's assistant, Alicia Wilburn, the rec department and EMA director, Ron McDonald. The last couple weeks have been very hectic for everyone involved. The state's been kind of switching gears on us left and right, and it's been challenging. You know, they tell us one thing on Wednesday, and then we hear something in a press conference on Thursday that's different. So, you know, not to no fault of their own, it's a very fluid situation, and I think we've handled it, or they have handled it very well. You know, we basically turned the rec department and the Crandall House into a call center overnight. And Ron McDonald has put in numerous hours. I mean, I've talked to him, you know, pretty much every night, weekends, and he's attending meetings daily with EMA directors and the Rhode Island Department of Health. So he's putting in a ton of hours to make sure that everybody in Hopkinton gets vaccinated as soon as possible, and that the residents are able to access information and we can answer any questions that they may have. So I just wanted to thank them. With that being said, I just wanted to see if Ron wanted to jump on and just kind of give an update and maybe answer any questions.
Sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Ron.
Okay. I'd like to echo what Brian said. The help that the town staff is giving in his office and the rec office is incredible. I just want to give you a quick snapshot of what EMA has been doing. Hopkinton EMA started in January, February, almost a year ago, preparing for COVID-19. We've held trainings for mass vaccination clinics, updated our town plans. We've had Meds Pod plan, which is our mass vaccination plan for the 9 years I've been EMA director, and we've had it even before that. And we've also coordinated working to get the police and the fire departments PPE, personal protective equipment, as well as the ambulance services. As the acting town manager said, we've been having meetings almost weekly, if not daily, with the Rhode Island Department of Health. Our local EMA directors, we have a close relationship with all the Southern Rhode Island EMA directors. We speak every few days, actually, in regards to COVID-19. We've been providing information. EMA is a conduit for information to our local public safety agencies, as well as the public. I maintain a social media Facebook site for EMA. We try to get out information as it comes in as quickly as possible. And we worked with the acting town manager and the IT department to get a COVID-19 page on the town's website to be able to get information out to the public as quickly as possible. Next thing we did is we conducted a regional Meds Pod. Again, the Meds Pod is a moniker for our mass vaccination clinics. So at the end of December and the first week of January, we participated with 8 other Southern Rhode Island towns and did a mass vaccination clinic for first responders and home health care, hospice, school nurses, and a couple of other groups. Over the 7 days that we had for the first and second doses, a month apart, we did approximately 2,640 vaccinations, which went very well. I've also been working in various roles at the pods. I've been pod commander, which oversees the entire pod a couple times, as well as I've been helping coordinate all the volunteers for the pods with Westerly's EMA director. Just as an example, it takes about 50 to 60 volunteers, which includes medical directors, which are doctors, volunteer pharmacists, nurses, nurse practitioners, EMS personnel, regular RNs, and general volunteers such as greeters, observers. After the people get their vaccinations, they have to be observed for 15 or 30 minutes, depending on their medical history, control of the flow through the building. It's actually a great process. And if anyone wants to see it in action, one of the days I'm working, you can feel free to come by. But 50 to 60 volunteers just to run one regional pod approximately. Sometimes you run them 3 hours, sometimes you run them 6 hours. So when you start to multiply that by, weeks, the numbers are pretty big. So coordinating 200, 300 volunteers for an 8-week clinic, it's a pretty big task. So the Department of Health also allocated 40 doses for Hopkinton, as well as other towns got doses for a pilot program, which we started on January 31st. There were 2 days that we vaccinated residents 75 and older for Hopkinton. So we were allocated 40 doses and we administered 37. Unfortunately, 3 people took ill, so they couldn't attend. But it was a way for us to test how long it would take to vaccinate the people that went through the flow, any questions they had, and whatnot. So it went really well. We selected them from the Rhode Island Special Needs Emergency Registry, as well as some of the people at Saugatucket Springs. Just to note, the state only gave us approximately 4 days or less to put this together. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. We had to come up with a plan quickly and staff the clinic because there wasn't a clinic scheduled at that time. So we had 4 days to come up with a procedure, each town, and then to staff the clinic. So we did that and it went off very well. Also, the federal government, in partnership with CVS and Walgreens, they completed Canachet Cliffs already for us. So that took a decent size of our population out of the mix. They would not provide me with the information, unfortunately. They said due to confidentiality, but I couldn't get firm numbers, but talking with the facility staff there, approximately 100 residents and staff were completed. So depending on their demographic, I mean, that took a lot off our plate. Also, all the group homes in town were completed by the CVS and federal partnership as well. So to today, Currently, we're planning for the general age population of Hopkinton for 75 plus. We're going to start some clinics on February 21st for Hopkinton. The state is giving us 60 doses per date. So that's 240 doses at a minimum that we're going to have. So as the acting town manager said, the town staff has been calling residents. We decided to do it manual process instead of giving out computer links for several reasons. Computer links have been shared to unauthorized people, which cause a lot of problems throughout the state during various clinics. So it's a security issue. Plus, we figure many of the elderly residents may not have access to computers or internet. So due to us only having 60 doses, we figured we'd give it a good try to call each resident in a predetermined plan that we came up with personally and try to register them. Although it's going to take a little extra time, we felt it was the best way to go. So the town manager's office and rec, they already did the pilot program and it went fairly well. So we decided to continue it and do the manual registration. So that started today. I'm not sure how many they got through by the end of the day, but February 21st to 24th, March 7th and March 10th. Those are going to be the dates that Hopkinton, Richmond, Charlestown, and North Kingstown are going to be working together at our regional Meds Pod in Wakefield at an old school building that's not being used for a school. And we're going to be vaccinating the 240 residents and then planning after that to do their second doses. We decided to stay in the regional Meds Pod for logistical reasons. We don't have to break down and set up a site in town, plus the staffing, the time and effort that goes into that. We already had it in place for first responders and the pilot group, and it worked very well. So 6 out of the 8 towns decided to stay together and help each other out, and it worked very well. So we're going to continue with that. The plan that we're going to use, and the town manager, if he has any input on this as well, we decided to use the voter list and his staff and the tax staff reconcile that with tax records. The IT department also put a Google form on the town's website, which is very helpful for residents or their family members if they're incapable to add their contact information. So if we didn't have an email address or an updated phone number or a best contact number, they could put it in there, and all those lists are going to be reconciled into one master list. And then we're going to sort it by age and start with the oldest and work their way down. And all the willing people will be registered for their vaccination if they so choose. Like Brian said, this has been a very fluid situation. The state changes a lot of things on the fly, unknown if it's federal government coming down or changes they're making. But for example, after we set up these clinics, we found out about the CVS Walgreens were getting vaccinations. Today, we found out Wood River Health Services we're also going to be getting vaccinations, which I believe are just going to be for their patients at this point. At this point, excuse me, I don't think it's going to be open to the public yet, but I'm going to be checking with them. So there's going to be other options out there, but I think our option is going to be the quickest and the best for our residents, because I think CVS and Walgreens are going to be overrun. So as of now, we're asking residents to go to the town website or their family members. They can click on the COVID-19 tab that the IT department put up there for all our current information. We have a frequently asked questions area. We have that Google form. We have the town's hotline telephone number. If people don't have access to a computer, they can call and speak with somebody, and they can either answer their questions, get their questions to me, or we can refer them to where they need to go, or they'll take down their information manually. It's just important to note that we're only doing age 75 plus at this time. We have to follow the state Department of Health guidance. We cannot change it. We have to follow what they say in their timeline. We cannot deviate from it. So although we sympathize with a lot of people's telephone calls, no matter what they do, we can't really accommodate them if they don't fit into the current criteria that the State Department of Health is giving us. So again, be patient and bear with us. Like I said, things change sometimes weekly, if not daily. And we're trying to manage it the best that we can. We think we have a good plan in place, and that's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Sure. Do any council members have a question?
Well,
Yes,
Go ahead, Sharon.
I just wanted to emphasize that if you're less than 75, you should not register yet on the website. Is that right?
That is correct. We're trying to keep the lines open for the 75 and up. And then once, the state comes down and says, we'll do another age group or whatever. We don't know what the plan is yet for, say 65 plus to 75. The state has not given us any firm guidance yet. We have meetings every Tuesday, so there'll be one tomorrow at 11. But we're trying to keep it just 75 and up for now, just so we can manage the information and not be overwhelmed with a lot of other information that's not pertinent right now.
Thank you.
I just think, Councilor Hurst, obviously, the people in the town should always check the town website for updates on the situation, on anything dealing with town government. Very important. I know I've been dealing with this issue through Facebook, and everybody is interested in it. And a lot of this information is fast moving, and you could say one thing and then something else turns up, but it's the CBS thing already. Everybody is very anxious. I'm anxious myself. I'm 67, but just try to relax if possible. My only complaint is about COVID. There seems to be a lot of inconsistency with decisions, and I'm not going to go beyond that, but just check the website. And if you know of anybody that is technologically challenged and doesn't do internet or Zoom meetings, check on them, check on our older residents. Usually they're the ones that don't necessarily do the internet or Zoom or any of those things, and just check on them. And that's a good neighbor thing to do in Hopkinton. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Do any other council members have any questions?
Yeah, Mr. President. Hey, hey, Ron, it's Councilor Geary. Just wanted to say thank you and commend you for, it seems like you said, stuff changes on a daily and sometimes it changes on an hourly. Extremely well done, and just keep us posted.
Will do. Thank you.
Bob Marvel here. I just have a question. Do you currently, or are you planning on tracking any metrics around vaccinations given? What your target audience or target numbers are, and how you're tracking to that?
We have a online system that everyone gets registered into for registration. It tracks first dose, second dose, all the type of demographics. So we do have that. Unfortunately, there's a bunch of different lists around. We don't have a totally accurate count of all the people age 75 and up. We have the voter list that had 630 some people on it. The State Department of Healthy Aging had a number of 400 and change. So we're kind of averaging out the number of people that we have, and all depending on how many doses the state gives us. We think we're in good shape, but some people may not want the vaccine right away. Some do. Some got it from other locations and stuff like that. So we are tracking it the best we can. There's just not a universal system, I guess you'd say, to track it. But anyone that gets the vaccine at any of the clinics in the state, we do have a record of it, and that record also goes to the vaccination registry that the State Department of Health maintains. So we do have some records, but as you can figure, it's challenging with all the different types of systems and things that are out there. But Brian's staff and recreation, they're also keeping a master list of everyone that they contact, and if they don't want it per se, or if they passed away, for example, we're keeping all that information on the spreadsheet. So we'll have the data in case we have to call people back if they didn't want the dose or something like that. So we're managing it the best we can.
Yeah, I just, the reason I ask is I think tracking, I understand you're tracking the details, and that's great. That's absolutely necessary. But translating that into high level numbers on, very similar to what they did at the state level with the COVID outbreak, tracking week to week, how many of your target population have been vaccinated as opposed to last week, and how are we, stepping closer to our target number, and just providing those high level numbers out on your website so people can see. And that might even help people who are kind of on the fence whether or not they want to get vaccinated. They see all these numbers increasing of people who are getting vaccinated. They may decide that it's worth it, at that point.
Yeah, definitely. That's something we can do. We can pull how many people we vaccinated. It's just reconciling that with how many total population we have. We don't really have a perfect number for that, but we can do something to say, this date we did this many, this day we did this many. That shouldn't be a problem. We can pull that off, definitely.
Yeah, and to add to that, if you can kind of weave into that, how many doses you get per shipment, because sometimes when you start to see like a flat line in how you're vaccinating, people may not understand that. Why are you not vaccinating as fast? But then if you add the line of, well, we're still waiting for shipment of doses, and as soon as we get those doses, that's going to go up. That helps people understand that, you're trying to get through it as quickly as you can, but you're relying on the state as well.
Yep, definitely. We will do that. Thank you.
Sure.
Excellent. This is Councilor Moffett. Ron, I just wanted to thank you for your efforts. Obviously Brian and the recreation staff and the town hall employees. I mean, it's no small task, that's for sure. And I really appreciate your efforts. So I have one hand raised here. Go ahead, Joe. Just say your name, please.
Hi, this is Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. Of course, now I'm going to announce I'm of that golden age. I did leave a message for Alicia last week. She called me back within an hour or so. She was very helpful, very informative, gave me the information I needed. But one of the reasons I also called her was because being the director of public welfare, I was looking for as much information as I could gather so that if I had anyone call me, I would have the information for them. I'd also like to compliment probably Chris and other staff members for the information on the website. Between Alicia and our website, as Ron pointed out, it's very helpful. I printed that out, so I have that information available, but I just want to thank you guys for a job well done. That's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. So Ron, thank you for your time. Brian, did you have anything else to add here?
No, I just wanted to, just touch quickly on the fact that Councilor Davis's question about the 74 and under demographic, and like Ron said, they haven't announced how they're going to do that. And as of today, the current administration was basically saying that it might be done more on a state level. It's still kind of up in the air. So for that reason, we don't want to, lead people, in a direction and make them think that, this is all going to continue to go the same way it's going now. If things actually do, in fact, go to the state level and the Rhode Island Department of Health takes over, until we know more, we don't really want to, we're just being careful about what information we put out there.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Okay, we're all set?
Yep. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thank you.
Thanks.
Up next, new business. Chief of Police report. A report from Chief Palmer. Would you like to have a seat here, sir?
Good evening, Chief David Palmer, Hopkinton Police Department. Thank you, Mr. President, Councilor, for giving me the opportunity to give a quick update on some of the things that, well, two things on the agenda. First being the speed alert 24 radar message sign. Some of the public has requested a trailer we put out there. It actually went down in August of 2020. It was a weather-related accident, and give kudos to Captain Carrier, who spoke to the insurance company, convinced them to purchase the brand new one. There is no book value for a speed trailer, so that was to our advantage, and it saved us $15,000. So that's that took about 3 or 4 months for it to get in there and get operational. The new one that we have there, you'll see it out there. I think it's at Cranwell Field right now. It's a little bit more visible when it registers a vehicle that's speeding. The blue lights go on and it looks very similar to a police car. So hopefully that has an effect and slows down the traffic even more. It has the ability to have messages on there. We've seen the other one, which also had the ability to put messages on. You see it for COVID-19 and overdose hotlines and things such as that. And we'll continue to do that. It also has the ability to analyze the speeds of vehicles hour for hour, and that's beneficial to us because when we put it out there, we know how much traffic is coming down the road at any given time and what their speeds are. When is the best place to go out there and do traffic enforcement for our police officers. And it actually registers lowest speed, highest speed, average speed, how many actually violate the speed in an hour. And we speak about that at roll call and develop plans for enforcement. The biggest problem is we have 45 square miles and obviously not enough officers to cover 45 square miles and slow down the traffic like we would like to do. But I do get 1 to 2 complaints a week from the public and asking for the speed sign out there. So I make it available, and I also try and send out the analysis that goes along with that. And it kind of opens up complainants' eyes how the traffic actually is. So I encourage people to either email me or call. My email address is chief@hopkintonpolice.org or info@hopkintonpolice.org. So that's available to you, and feel free to give me an email. Just I ask you to be patient because it does get backlogged. We usually put it out there for 4 or 5 days in a row. So my next topic is 20 for 2020. I spoke at this last November, just before the council got sworn in there, and mostly I spoke about was the body worn cameras. That's still status quo. I'm not going to talk too much about it, other than the fact that I expect at some point that it's going to come to fruition. And really, the big question is, how much money will either the state or the federal government give us to subsidize it? So we'll wait and see on that. One of the 20 for 2020 is is 20 promises that the 48 police chiefs across the state agreed to promise to the public to be more transparent during the social unrest that started in Minnesota. And I'm not going to talk to you about all 20 of them. What I'd like to do is every quarter or every third try and come in here and give you updates on certain promises of the 20. And tonight I'd just like to want to touch upon 6 or 7 of those. And the first one is, I'm actually going to combine number 6, which is public policies, and number 13, uniform use of force and civil rights violation. They kind of overlap, so I wanted to combine these. And what that is an agreement by all the police chiefs that we put on our website, use of force policies, bias-based policing prohibited policies, complaint forms against our police officers, and compliments for our police officers. I feel blessed being down here in Hopkinton. We have not had a lot of complaints against our officers, but it's on the website if you want to, and we take any complaints seriously. Compliments, it's the same form, but mostly what I do is I get thank you notes. They ask that each agency forward the use of force reporting to the FBI and the AGs. We've been doing that for the last 3 or 4 years now. And basically what that is anytime a police officer either has to go hands-on, draws his weapon, or uses his weapon, which we've had at mostly for euthanizing an injured animal, so that still goes on the use of force. So we've been doing that right along. In the last two Rhode Island Commission on Prejudice and Bias Zoom meetings they've had, they are going to be forwarding to us a link so that in the event that somebody is a little bit concerned about calling the police to complain about the police, that they can guide them on how it's going to be done. And as I said, we take all those very seriously. Two things that came up in the Minnesota issue they had with George Floyd, and rightfully so, were chokeholds and duty to intervene. And I just want to touch upon that. The police department already had policy on that, and I'm just going to quickly read to you because they're fairly short. On chokeholds, techniques intended or designed to cut off blood flow or oxygen to the brain will not be used unless lethal force is authorized. And on duty to intervene, all officers present and observing another officer using force that is clearly beyond that which is objectively reasonable under the circumstances shall, when in a position to do so, safely intercede to prevent the use of such force. Officers shall report these observations to a supervisor as soon as practical. Now, these are policies, but they're not just policies. These are things that we speak at length at roll call and go over scenarios and such. So I think we were ahead of the game on before these promises came out. Face-to-face interaction is number 14. That's the reason why I'm here, because unfortunately with the way COVID-19 pandemic is right now, can't really have face-to-face contact with the public. Prior to the COVID-19 breakout, we had a couple coffee with a cop, and and I thought it was very successful. We got to meet a lot of the people in Dunkin' Donuts, and we had some great conversation. Number 7 is our accreditation. Again, I'm very happy to tell you that Hopkinton Police became accredited through Rhode Island Police Accreditation Commission, which is known as RIPAC, back in October 2018. It is a 3-year accreditation, and so we're due to be reaccredited in October. So the beauty of that is not only do they oversee your policies, but they view our compliance to make sure that we are actually following all policies. Number 8 is our feedback. And again, we're ahead of the game. They want you to get onto the social medias, and we already have been on Facebook for probably 5 or 6 years. We have been on Twitter for, I believe, 3 years. Obviously, we've had a website since I've been down here, and we have a link on that for Department of Justice Civil Rights Reporting Portal. So if you have any issues, you can always, again, email me at chief@hopkintonpolice.org. Number 11, officer wellness. Most people think of police officers that they need to be physically fit, but many studies have come out that just as important is officers' well-being and the mental well-being. And back in 2017, we approached the town. The town was good enough to buy Coastline Employee Assistance Program, which is known as EAP, for the town. It's not just for the police department. So it gives the opportunity of all employees having any type of problems, whether it be marital, it doesn't have to be on duty problems. It can be sexual orientation that they're stressed about. Whatever it is, there is a group of people that can give professional consultation and help that police officer or employee with trying to get rid of the anxiety. They help with the stress management of it all. Number 17, external training. It states incorporate training resources or book a speaker from social justice / community relations organization at least once a year. And again, that's difficult right now with the COVID-19. On February 19th, so we have a fair and biased policing training with the state police that I expect that several of my officers will be on that. And we have the AGs have upcoming training on hate crimes. I've also reached out to John Avant. John Avant and I work together. We're at state police, and he is now with Rhode Island Guardian, and their specialty is public relations and police approachability and police contact relations. So again, he wants to do the training. We usually do trainings like this with Richmond. Unfortunately, you get 30 people in a room right now. That's going to be against the COVID-19 parameters. So it will happen, and we're finding more and more ways to get training, mostly through Zoom. And the upside of that is that it's less expensive. So we're not sending officers and spending a lot of overtime to the training, and we're getting some pretty good training along the way. The last thing I'm going to mention tonight is number 18 is a review NAACP guidelines. And this is 15 policies on subjects that they perceive that each police department should have solid policies on. And again, I'm happy to announce that we, on each one of these, the Hopkinton Police has addressed those, and those are things such as internal reviews, racial profiling, again, firearms use of force, and de-escalation, intervention. And we've actually had 2 trainings just this past month from PMAM on de-escalation and intervention. So that covers some of the other ones. I do have, I think, 7 or 8 that I need to address. I will save that for the next one and update. I really want to thank the public, because really I feel very blessed that we have the support of the public for the police department. It's nice to see, and we do get a lot of thank you notes, and it's well received for us.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chief Palmer. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the efforts and the work that your department does. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to, Councilman Hurst, I'd like to thank the chief. He's been here a couple of hours. He's a very patient man. waiting to speak. So I want the people of Hopkins to know that the chief is stuck around a couple of hours. It'll actually longer than a couple hours to speak to the town council. So I'm sure he had other things to do, but he stuck with us for a couple of hours, and I think that should be known. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Mr. President, I just want to pass on a thank you for Chief Palmer coming in. We feel very fortunate to have him and his staff throughout the town, and we 100% support you, Chief.
Thank you, Councilman. Much appreciated.
Steve?
Yes, go ahead, Sharon.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Chief Palmer, if you would consider on your policy on chokeholds to eliminate that totally, not have it in there to say not to be used unless lethal force is authorized. Can we find another way to restrain somebody other than doing a chokehold? Can you truly consider eliminating that from the police department of Hopkinton?
We have spoken to our accreditation on that, and the difficulty there is we want our officers, we would like to be able to do that, but we also want our officers to be safe. And there's some certain circumstances that can occur that if they don't have that as a option, as you at the end of it states, if lethal force could be used, which means it would be at a time where the alternative would be that the police officer could legally, for his own self-defense, shoot the subject. And
yeah, but do you have to shoot him so he dies? Can you shoot him in the leg or something so that he's then you can put restraining things on him? I don't understand. I just don't understand what the purpose of the chokehold is. If their hands are tied behind their back or whatever, why do you need to have a chokehold? I don't, or you know, I don't understand why you need one at all. There has to be other ways of restraining someone. And especially when usually you have more than one police officer at the scene. I just really would appreciate it if you would reconsider that.
Well, the only thing I will say is that I will give you a scenario where this could be a problem when you started going hands-on with a subject and you're controlling him. He doesn't have handcuffs on, and he pulls a knife on you, and if you let go of him, you're going to be stabbed and possibly die. And a chokehold at that particular time might be appropriate. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to choke him, and you choke him and then possibly go to another maneuver. But there's been a lot of studies on that, and obviously we want all our police officers to be safe as well.
Well, I'm just saying I prefer, and I just really wish there was another way, especially when there's usually more than one policeman. So while one person is, I just don't understand if you have more than one policeman, two policemen ought to be able to subdue one person without having to do a chokehold.
Well,
Until they get the restraints on their arms and or their wrists and their feet. I don't know. I just think that there has to be another way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Chief Palmer. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, up next, boards, commissions, and committees. Discuss, consider, and possibly vote to accept Agnes Hall's resignation from the Charahoe Finance Committee.
Mr. President, Councilman Hurst, I make a motion to accept the resignation of Agnes Hall from the Charahoe Finance Committee with regret.
Do I have a second?
Mr. President, second, and we're with regret, and thank you for your service to the town.
I would say that I'm going to offer a motion to adjourn in Agnes's honor. Just to give you a little background, she's been a longtime volunteer. She's also a former paid employee of the town. And she's been stood by Hopkinton for decades, and she should be recognized as such. She's been around a while, and I say that respectfully, but she has served Hopkinton very loyally through the years. Thank you.
Excellent. When we do come to the adjournment of the meeting, we will adjourn this meeting in honor of Agnes. With that being said, do I had a second from Council.
Public forum, right?
Yeah, but
We have to vote.
right? I had a second from Council.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Scott
Moffett,
Billhurst,
aye.
aye.
Davis, aye.
Okay, motion passes. Up next, we have the public forum. Anyone who wishes to speak, please raise your hand, and I will call you in the order in which you raise your hand. Up first here is Joe. Joe, just say your name for the record.
Good evening. This is Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. I would like to thank David Caswell and the staff from our DPW department for the outstanding job they did during the recent snowstorms. Trucks were on Old Depot Road at 2:30 in the morning, and they were out here several times during the Super Bowl. Also, as you drive around our town, you will notice the work being done to remove damaged trees. Sometimes we take it for granted, but when, listening to Chief Palmer and some of the other staff, we have a lot of great people that work for our town, and I think that they should be recognized for that. My other point is, as you're aware, I am now an elected official of our town, and I would like to clarify some things. I sent an email on February 6th to Brian Rosso, Steve Moffett, Elizabeth Cook Martin, as well as our town council members. And at this point, I would just like to read this email. I start off by saying, hello, everyone. I was part of the original group called Hopkinton Citizens for Responsible Planning to prevent a zone change from RFR 80 to special commercial for solar for a project across from our home on Old Depot Road, and that was during the summer of 2018. I also worked to prevent other zone changes in our town. A new group was formed in the fall of 2019 called the Hopkinton Citizens Alliance, which I was a board member for 2 meetings. I resigned from that board on December 15, 2019. I spoke to each board member, except for one individual, to explain my reasons for leaving the Hopkinton Citizens Alliance. I also asked a board member to read my reasons for leaving. As you are aware, for the past 14 months, I have been involved in our town in many various ways. As you are aware, I was elected to the position of Director of Public Welfare, which I enjoy very much. I have worked with 3 residents to provide assistance in their time of need. I am currently working with 1 resident who would like to provide financial help to those in need. I am sending you this email to inform you that I am not part of any group, organization, board, etc. I was never a plaintiff in any legal action either. I would like this email to be read at the next council meeting and be part of the record. Thank you in advance, Joseph Moreau, 32 Old Depot Road, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, 02832. I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank our town council president, Steve Moffett, for allowing me the opportunity to read this email. And again, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else in the public wish to speak? If so, please raise your hand. Okay, seeing no hands raised, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. President, I make a motion that we adjourn in honor of Agnes Hall for her years of service, paid and unpaid, to the town of Hopkinton.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. President.
All in favor?
Aye.
Scott Billhurst, aye.
Moffett, aye.
Davis, aye.
Marvel, aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you,
Good
everyone.
night, thank you.
My kids will not let me forget.